Just about a year ago, we brought the Jimny together with the Mahindra Thar, and though we found the Thar a fantastic off-roader, we also thought it was best as a second or third vehicle in the family. The Jimny, by virtue of its 5 doors, was the more complete and more sensible choice. But fast forward a year and the Jimny has competition from not one, but 2 new 5-door off-roaders. This is the Mahindra Thar Roxx, and this is the 4x4x4 5-door Force Gurkha. Different buyers will be interested in these models for different reasons, but first let's judge this trio for what they are: off-roaders. The 3 tick the off-roader essentials checklist with tough ladder frame constructions and low range. The Jimny is the only one to use solid axles both front and rear, promising greater articulation, while the Thar Roxx and Gurkha 5-door use a combo of solid axles at the back and a comfort-biased independent front suspension. The Jimny is the odd one out in terms of footwear, running highway terrain tires, while the Thar Roxx and Gurkha come short with standard fit all-terrain tires. An on-paper comparison will tell you that it's the Thar Roxx with the best approach angle, the Jimny with the best departure angle, and the Gurkha with the best ramp breakover angle and water wading ability. But what are they really like in the rough? It's 4 low and over to our favorite off-road playground. Learn off-road at Pali, Maharashtra. Into the Thar Roxx first. It's quick to dismiss any doubts about off-roadability being compromised by the wheelbase extension versus a 3-door Thar. Now, I've done this course with the 3-door Thar before. The Thar Roxx doesn't really feel compromised by that longer wheelbase. It's doing the same obstacles probably as well as the 3-door Thar would have. The Roxx's move to an easier-to-twirl electric power steering brings in a new level of convenience as well, and it's actually easiest to maneuver of these 3. The Roxx featured here is a manual, but 4x4 Roxxes with automatic transmissions promise to be more maneuverable still thanks to what Mahindra calls IntelliTurn. The function independently brakes the inner wheels to tighten the turning radius on a loose surface. There's more in the Thar's off-road arsenal. One major upgrade that the Thar Roxx gets over the 3-door Thar is an electronic locking rear differential. The Thar 3-door gets a mechanical unit that works automatically when it senses a difference between wheel speed between the left rear and right rear tires. The problem with that was that it was very snappy in its actual actuation. This one enhances the comfort level and also gives you ready control when you need it. Brake locking differential works in the background, while the rear locking differential helps prep the Thar for an obstacle in advance and helps the Roxx claw its way out of trouble. Hill descent control also takes some drama away from downhill sections. The Thar Roxx can feel tricky at very low speeds though. A point of note is that clutch modulation isn't really very smooth. So in very low speed settings, like you would find yourself on an off-road course like this, it can feel a bit snappy. Next up, the Force Gurkha 5-door. The first floor seating has its pros and cons. Now the Gurkha is a huge vehicle and it feels as much when you're on a tight trail like the one I'm on right now. I must say that because you're sat up high and you have this really large glass house, you get a really good view. But also, because you're sat up high, when you're looking down on these steep descents, it can feel a bit scary. There's no hill descent control, but 4x4 low keeps speeds in check. Even so, there's no escaping the sensation that there's a lot of SUV around you. It exhibits the most weight transfer over articulations too, but the longer wheelbase does help the Gurkha 5-door feel more grounded than the Gurkha 3-door. Notably, the Gurkha is the only one with a shift-on-the-fly 4x4 system. Now, 4 low will see you quite far in a Gurkha, but if you get really stuck, you have these mechanical rear and front locking differentials. With the rear diff lock, the Gurkha finds grip when there's seemingly little of it, while the front locking differential is your ally in the most extreme situations. Now, they're really handy. Thing is that they don't always work. Engaging them is quite a mechanical process. You have to lift these levers and you're not always sure whether they've engaged. You might do the process and even get an indicator on the instruments but not feel any difference in ability. There were also times when we couldn't unlock the diffs. It's a bit of an irritant when you need your car to be on your side in trying conditions. The Gurkha, in a sense, feels the most mechanical, it feels the most old school, but again, that's not something I'm sure everyone will want. It's actually the Jimny with the fewest off-road frills, no off-road modes and no locking differentials. Aside from low range, all you get is hill descent control. However, the Jimny champions the cause of small and light is right. The Jimny is compact footprint, it's lightweight, really puts you at ease in the rough. You can really, you will figure your way out. And because the Jimny is so low set, it feels quite planted and doesn't give you that feeling of tipping over when you're on a side incline, which is more pronounced in the larger and higher off-roaders, particularly the Gurkha. The Jimny is significantly down on par to the others, but it's also a good few hundred kilos lighter. You will have to work the Jimny's engine the hardest to keep momentum. Stick to the right line out and the plucky Suzuki will scrabble its way through the tricky stuff. On a side note, the Jimny with us is a manual. I've done this very course in an automatic Jimny last year and I remember that being a much nicer experience. Manual gear shifts need effort and the clutch isn't easiest to modulate. Ardent off-roaders will be quick to slap on more purposeful all-terrain or mud-terrain tires onto a Jimny, but it's quite satisfying to see all that it can do even on its stock highway tire setup. The learnings at Learn Off-Road are of the Jimny being the least intimidating, the Gurkha feeling the rawest, and the Roxx striking a great balance between ability and sophistication. Five-door off-roaders they may be, but as you might have realized by now, talking size, there's the compact Jimny on one side and the significantly larger Thar Roxx and Gurkha 5-door on the other. The Jimny is the shortest, narrowest and lowest, rides on small 15-inch wheels and in all, almost looks like a miniature in the company of the other two. It's not the one to give you an ego boost if that's what you want from your off-roader. The Roxx is the longest in overall length and wheelbase and looks the business, particularly in top-spec form that gets 19-inch rims. That Jeep Wrangler vibe is unmissable. Over to the Desi G, the Force Gurkha that at over 2 meters tall looks the most substantial. 18-inch rims help balance the shape while the snorkel, windshield bar, roof rack and rear ladder make the Gurkha look ever ready for adventure. The three offer very different experiences inside. It's a climb into the Thar Roxx's cabin. However, the Roxx immediately impresses with what is the most upmarket interior here, though all the best keeping the cream upholstery and plastics clean over a day of off-roading. Overall material quality is the best here, with the large touchscreen and digital dials also doing their bit to up the ambience inside. The touchscreen is nice to use and packs in off-road data screens too, but all features weren't functional on our test car. Also, the menus on the digital dials are cumbersome to navigate through. The Thar in top-spec AX7 guys goes the distance with features such as a powered driver's seat, ventilated front seats, a 360-degree camera, wireless phone charger, electric parking brake, as well as ADAS, which I'll get to in a bit. Seat comfort is fine and the high driving position gives a good view of the world outside. However, there's not enough footroom on manual gearbox versions and the pedal covers also work themselves loose over our time with the Thar. Space for small items is decent. You'll need to trek your way up into the Gurkha's high-set cabin, but the effort rewards you with a commanding driving position, the large glass house only aiding visibility in all directions. The front seats will also accommodate the largest of individuals with ease. The Gurkha feels airiest inside, at least up front, with a sizable space between the front seats. Just check out the width of the center console. That being said, the Gurkha also feels the most basic inside, and overall fit and finish is a few notches down on rivals, and frankly, not in keeping with the Force's price tag. Features-wise, the Gurkha packs in a digital instruments cluster and a 9-inch touchscreen that's big but basic. There's no auto climate control either. The Gurkha can't shake the impression of being a purpose-built tool. Access to the Jimny's front seats is the easiest. The front seats are comfy, but you sit close to your co-passenger, and it really feels like a small vehicle. And because you don't sit all that high, you don't get the same view out as you do in the other off-roaders. Though I'd still rate visibility to be good. The dashboard is functional and material quality is decent. Maruti's 9-inch touchscreen is good to use, but the reverse camera could do with more pixels. Also, storage is in short supply on a Jimny. Here's a quick look at how the off-roaders compare on features. Over to the rear seats. The Thar's rear door handle is vertically oriented and you will need to use the footboard and hand grips to pull yourself in. The three-door Thar couldn't really cut it as a family vehicle, but things are very different in the Thar Roxx, and that's not just down to the addition of the rear doors. Space and comfort at the back are surprisingly good. Now, the front seat is set to my driving position. I'm really comfortable on knee room. There's enough space for a third passenger to sit in comfort, and what's nice is when the middle seat isn't in use, you have a rear center armrest. The rear seat back can also be reclined to your comfort. And what makes perhaps the biggest difference, at least in this company, is the inclusion of a panoramic sunroof. The Maruti Jimny sits lowest to the ground and that helps when getting in. But do note, the rear door aperture isn't all that big. The Jimny is the smallest of the three off-roaders and it feels as much when you're on the inside. Now, it is registered as a 4-seater, which means the rear seats are only meant to host 2 occupants. Even so, larger framed individuals like myself will be sitting shoulder to shoulder at the back. But space isn't all that bad for average size adults. Knee room is okay, headroom for someone of my height is about adequate, and the windows also give you a pretty good view out. You miss a rear center armrest and there are no dedicated AC vents either. Next up, the Force Gurkha. Again, it calls for the most effort to get into and out of. It's a trek up into the Gurkha's cabin, but once you're inside, you'll be a bit surprised because for a vehicle that's so large, it's not all that roomy for large occupants like myself. Now, I'm just under 6 feet tall, front seat set to my driving position, and I don't have all that much knee room, but there is enough width to see 3 passengers in a good level of comfort. Now, what Force could have done is added a bit more adjustability into this bench. It doesn't recline nor does it move back. All you get is this fold-down center armrest. You get some USB slots over here and roof-mounted air conditioning vents. But the Gurkha has one thing that the other 2 off-roaders don't have: a third row of seats. Given that the middle row seats don't slide or tumble, you can only access the third row via the tailgate. You'll have to use the step and take support to climb into the rearmost section of the Gurkha's interior. The front-facing seats are comfy and get 3-point seat belts, but the wheel well eats into footroom and taller passengers will find the top of the windows at eye level. The other thing, luggage space is compromised. Fitting in luggage in the limited space available will block access to the third row of seats. There's a luggage rack on the roof as an alternative, but we'd advise against using it as it'll only worsen the Gurkha's top-heavy dynamics. The Jimny's tailgate swivels open to reveal reasonable luggage room, while the Thar Roxx's 2-part tailgate gives access to the most accommodating luggage area. The Jimny and Thar also give the option to fold the second row to make more space for luggage. It's when you're comparing specs you'll realize the Thar Roxx offers the widest variety of engines and gearboxes. They're petrol and diesel engines, each with manual and auto gearbox options. However, those looking specifically for 4x4 will be restricted to the diesel manual or diesel auto. There's no petrol 4x4 Roxx, at least for the moment. Featured here is the Thar Diesel 4x4 manual. The Gurkha 5-door is yours in a single diesel manual avatar, but it runs the latest iteration of Force's Mercedes-derived 2.6-litre diesel engine, which ups power and torque to 140 horsepower and 320 Nm respectively. The Jimny, on the other hand, is a petrol-only model, though you have the option of a 5-speed manual gearbox or a 4-speed torque converter automatic. What are they like to drive on the road? Let's go in order of engine power. First up, the Jimny, whose 1.5-litre petrol engine makes a humdrum 105 horsepower and 134 Nm. The Jimny's 1.5-litre petrol engine does well in low-speed urban settings as well as a low-speed off-road environment. It's when you take it out onto the open road that you'll experience its weaknesses. And I mean weakness in a literal sense because this engine doesn't make all that much power. It doesn't have any punch, it's slow to rev, and when you need to overtake in a hurry, well, you'll have to either downshift or flatten your foot on the accelerator pedal and wait patiently. The Jimny's 4-speed auto gearbox is old, but as I found on the off-road course, it's still nicer than the manual out on the road too. The 5-speed manual gearbox feels clunky to use, and even the clutch is on the heavier side. The steering also takes some getting used to. The Jimny steering is slow geared, so you'll have to give it a bit more lock than you'd expect to in a corner. An unusually large turning circle also works against the Jimny, whose small size is otherwise a boon in tight city confines. A highlight on the Jimny is ride comfort. Low speed ride is nice and absorbent, and even at higher speeds it feels quite planted. Of course, the fact that it sits relatively low to the ground makes a big difference here. Into the Gurkha, and of course the first thing to talk is of the updated engine. The 2024 model year Gurkhas come with a heart transplant, and with that heart transplant comes in a whole lot more power. The power figure stands at 140 horsepower. Now, it's not a massive figure for a vehicle of this size and weight, but you have to remember that just a couple of months ago, the Gurkha 3-door was offered with a 90 horsepower version of the same engine. Now, the engine feels a lot readier with its power delivery. It doesn't have that commercial vehicle vibe that the older Gurkha engine had. It also revs a bit more, with the bit being the operative word, because by 3,500 RPM, the engine is done with its best. What the Gurkha does well is easy-going cruising. Engine aside, even the gearbox doesn't like to be rushed. The gearbox has a long throw, so you'll have to extend a bit, particularly for first and second gear, and gear shifts also need a bit of effort. Not helping matters here is the clutch that isn't the easiest to modulate. As for ride comfort, the Gurkha feels at home on bombed out sections of road, but there is some steering kickback, and you'll also feel a judder that comes through the body. But for the size of the potholes that the Gurkha can flatten, ride comfort can be described as cushy. The Gurkha's height will force you, pun intended, to go easy, especially on winding roads. On a winding road, you will have to keep speeds in check, because this is a heavy and tall vehicle, and that high center of gravity also comes with a lot of body roll. But what's also clear is that the lengthened wheelbase has made the Gurkha 5-door feel a lot more sure-footed than the 3-door model. What the Gurkha needs are uprated brakes. The front disc and rear drum setup doesn't feel strong enough. Into the Thar Roxx, that is the most satisfying to drive. The Roxx's performance is standout good, particularly in this company. It feels the most powerful, the punchiest, and well, even the sportiest. The engine feels alert at low speeds, it's got plenty to give in the mid-range, and it also revs quite quickly for a diesel. The engine's power and grunt does so much to uplift your driving experience. Mahindra's 2.2-litre M-Hawk diesel really is standout good. Helping here is the gearbox that's really nice to use, slots in slickly, and it's also the only 6-speed unit here. Clutch modulation needs care at low speeds though. Now, steering typically doesn't get mentioned in the list of highlights on an off-roader, but that is the case on the Thar Roxx. It is leagues ahead of the Jimny and Gurkha on this front. Now, this is a new generation electric power steering, and it weighs up so nicely. It's light at low speeds, yet gives you the confidence that you need at high speeds. And even the turning circle is rather nice for what is a pretty substantial vehicle. It's not quite as convenient to drive as a monocoque-bodied SUV, but the Roxx comes across as easy to maneuver as large body-on-frame off-roaders go. Onto the matter of safety, none of the three have a global NCAP or Bharat NCAP rating as yet. In terms of standard safety features, the Gurkha offers just the basics such as dual airbags, ABS and rear parking sensors, but handily does pack in a tire pressure monitor. The Jimny and Thar each get 6 airbags as standard, ESC, hill descent control, hill hold control and ISOFIX child seat mounts. Higher spec versions of the Thar add in front parking sensors, a tire pressure monitor, a 360-degree camera and rear disc brakes. Range-topping versions of the Thar go one up with segment-first camera and radar-based advanced driver assistance systems or ADAS. There's auto emergency braking, lane keep assist and high beam assist, while auto gearbox versions also feature adaptive cruise control with stop and go. The features are a great additional safety net and make the Thar Roxx feel more complete than the other two. Time for the final analysis. The Gurkha 5-door is big on road presence, and Force's updated engine has brought with it a noticeable performance upgrade too. However, the Gurkha still makes for a very committed choice. It's great off-road in the right hands, but the package as a whole just feels way too raw for something that costs 18 lakh rupees ex-showroom. A 3-year or 1.5 lakh kilometer standard warranty and 4 free services sweeten the deal to some extent. The Jimny is the most affordable of these 4x4 off-roaders. Prices start at 12.74 lakh rupees ex-showroom for the Zeta manual and top off at 14.79 lakh rupees for the Alpha automatic. Push for deals and discounts and you could save upwards of 2 lakh rupees on the listed prices. Judged purely as an off-roader, the Jimny impresses. It's an unintimidating, scrappy little thing that'll put a smile on your face in the wild. Thing is, the Jimny isn't quite as nice as everyday transport. The small cabin and unexciting engine are to blame. There's also the matter that the Jimny just doesn't have the road presence many want from their off-roader. In this comparison, it's the Thar Roxx that ticks more of the boxes of interest. It's got the right look and the right image, and that's a great starting point. The tough demeanor is backed by genuine ability off-road, a polished on-road driving experience, and enough frills and comfort to make the Roxx feel like an all-rounder. It makes the most convincing case as the only vehicle in the family, and that's why it's the one we'd readily recommend. Prices for the Roxx 4x4 variant start at 18.79 lakh rupees and top off at 22.49 lakh rupees ex-showroom for the fully loaded automatic versions. This diesel 4x4 manual AX7L comes in at 20.99 lakh rupees. The Thar Roxx is the most expensive model here, but pricing is actually tempting once you factor in all that the Mahindra packs in. Do note, if you're interested in one, now would be a good time to get in line because this is a model that's going to be in hot demand for a long time to come.